Well, the virus has now killed more than 100 people in China, and new cases have been confirmed around the world.
So you don't want to frighten the American public.
France and South Korea have also got evacuation plans.
But you need to prepare for and assume
strongly warning Americans to avoid all non-essential travel to China.
That this is going to be a real serious problem.
France, Australia, Canada, the US, Singapore, Cambodia, Vietnam, the list goes on.
Health officials are investigating more than 100 possible cases in the US.
Germany, a man has contracted the virus.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
Japan, where a bus driver contracted the virus.
Coronavirus has killed more than 100 people there and infected more than 4,500.
We have to prepare for the worst, always, because if you don't and the worst happens.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome to War Room Pandemic. The scenes you're seeing on your screens right now. The first nuclear test 75 years ago. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. On July 16th, 1945, 75 years ago, at 5:29 a.m. at Jordana del Muerto, the first atomic test took place here in the United States at what was then the U.S. Air Force Alamogordo Bombing and Gunnery Range. The words of J. Robert Oppenheimer in the immediate aftermath. Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds. It's episode 283 of War Room Pandemic, broadcasting live from Capitol Hill. Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, and down the line over to Stephen K. Bannon.
Oppenheimer, who was the head scientist of the Manhattan Project, I think he took that from the Holy Scripture of the Hindu religion. I think it came from the Gita, Lord Vishnu. Very powerful statement he said at the time. You know, we say all the time here on War Room, there are years in which nothing happens, or sometimes decades in which nothing happens, and then there's weeks in which decades happen. And that's the time we're living through today with this pandemic. Today's what, July 16th? They dropped in 1945. It was only weeks later the nuclear weapon was actually used to end World War II in the Pacific and to end World War II, the fighting of it overall. Jack Maxey made a pretty important statement. We're getting ready for the show, Jack. You said, hey, yesterday we talked about Hong Kong being Czechoslovakia in 1938. 7 years later, 7 years, they were testing a nuclear weapon. It just shows you that when things ramp up, they really ramp up, and that's one of the things we're trying to make sure that everybody understands today. There's a reason we do War Room Pandemic. We talk about the pandemic, the economic inferno that it incited, the financial crisis on top of that, and also obviously this cultural crisis we have now in the United States within the context of this great geopolitical struggle that's going on between the Chinese Communist Party and the Alliance of Liberty. So really another fascinating day. Great open. I guess my speakers here didn't pick up the nuclear explosion, but I'm sure we'll rectify that later. What I want to start today, we've got a lot to go through. We're going to get into the CCP, we're going to get into China, we're going to get a lot that's going on, a lot that's happening. But one of the things I want to talk about is obviously the campaign and the polling. Raheem, Jack, Greg, can you walk through? Let's just do a highlight reel of where this polling is and what the polling's telling us right now.
Well, Greg, the Quinnipiac poll, which has been the widely cited one in the last 24 hours by the establishment media, has also been widely criticized. Tell us a little bit about what this poll is saying and why Tim Murtaugh, why the Trump campaign is pushing back so heavily on this.
So one of the things in this poll where Joe Biden is up by 15 points nationally, one of the main pushbacks, and it's rightfully so that they're doing this, is that it wasn't used off of a verified voter file.
Now, what does that mean? Just for the people who aren't in the weeds on this stuff, what is a verified voter file?
So the voter rolls of each state, pollsters can go and pull that data and make sure that the people that they're sampling, that they're speaking to, getting the responses from, are actually registered voters versus people that just say, yes, I am registered to vote. So taking their word for it versus making sure that the accuracy is there in a verified way.
It's a huge difference. By the way, it's a huge difference. I made a film one time called The Hope and the Change in the spring of 2012 for the re-election campaign, talking about people that voted for Obama that weren't going to vote for him, Democrats, independents. And we made that fundamental mistake the first time we went. We took people's words for it as we did casting with people down in, I think it was Gastonia, North Carolina. It turned out, as we went back and checked, which we did after we did, like 100 interviews to see who could be put in the movie, it turned out that 90% of the people either didn't remember or lied to us about their actual registration. And so it's one of the things. It's also, Greg, it was weighted, I think, a little too much to independents and the Democrats, was it not?
Exactly. There was only 20% of Republicans used in this survey, which we're not going to get close to 30, maybe that would be accurate, but closer to 26 would be.
It was 24%. It was 24% Republican.
24%.
It was
yes.
20. Okay, wait. It's 24% Republican, which meant that the sample was D plus 10.
Exactly.
Which is way larger than we've ever seen.
Exactly.
Right. This is and here's the thing. Quinnipiac now has been criticized for this time and time again, and at this same point in the last presidential election cycle, they were hyping the same thing with Clinton, right? Oh, she's up 9 points. And, they're doing it with Biden again here.
Yeah, exactly. That discrepancy is a massive error on Quinnipiac's end.
We're not a poll truther, but I mean directionally, when you lay all these out and look at the averages, clearly there's some trends here that don't look great. Particularly the trend to think about the American people in the pandemic. What is the right track, wrong track, and what people think about the leadership so far in the pandemic, Greg?
Yeah. Steve, on that note, in the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, 72% say that the country is on the wrong track, and that is a disturbing percentage.
What do people think about what do you think about leadership as far as the pandemic goes?
Yep, so right in that range as well, 70%.
It's two-thirds, one-third?
That's right, and that's something we've seen across the last couple of polls on this. It's 2/3, 1/3, keeps coming back time and time again. The leadership, whether it's on people talking about masks and how they feel about masks, people talking about the financial element of this and how they feel about the checks that they're getting, how long some of this thing's taken for them, what they're seeing recently, Steve, with the news about the PPP loans and who they've been going to. So you can understand why some of these polls, as you say, we're not poll truthers, but we do look at every single one in earnest and see where they might be right and where they might be wrong. And that Quinnipiac one is horrible. Greg?
And then a third one that came out was the CNBC Change Research poll. And one of their extremely flawed methodologies in that one was that they found their sample through quote-unquote targeted online ads to find and that is even worse than the Quinnipiac one of you're going out there on the internet to find people that are going to want to take the survey versus you actually finding the best sample.
Well, one of the biggest things about this, Greg and Steve, that I've been talking about for years as well is this new random digit dial, or not so new anymore, random digit dial method of reaching people, where they end up actually reaching more people who are inclined to be on their cell phones all the time, inclined to be not at work, they're reaching them in the middle of the day, and so they're naturally reaching on a random digit dial, i.e. not necessarily registered, certainly not necessarily likely voters. They're reaching people who are more inclined, A, to be liberal or left-leaning, but B, also just to tell pollsters what they want to hear.
When you look at the polls, even directionally, I think one of the things that, I've been recommending for a long time is action, 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 but I think now it's got to be action, urgency, and focus. If you look at what President Trump's done, and we're going to get into this more in the later show, particularly at the bottom of the hour, and Dr. Bradley Thayer will be joining us. If you look at what he's done and has really come to light in the last 72 hours about this alliance he's putting together against the Chinese Communist Party, and it's the three vectors. It's the information warfare, it is economic warfare, and it's kinetic war. It's the three vectors that were laid out in unrestricted warfare by the Chinese over 20 years ago. President Trump, whether he's now, there's out today, and we're going to talk later in the show about TikTok. There may be some taking down of TikTok, Huawei, There's discussion, I know, behind the scenes about WeChat. There's all types of things about really combating this information war. I think the Twitter thing yesterday requires us to delve into that. An economic war, you see what he's done in Hong Kong. It's not what the ultra hawks want, but it's a great start. He also announced this last night. They leaked to the New York Times that all 92 million members of the Chinese Communist Party could be put under very tough visa restrictions, travel not just to the United States, but this could spread to also to Europe and the United Kingdom. So it's, and if you look at kinetic war, he's got carrier battle groups sailing the Straits of Taiwan and the South China Sea. The English are thinking of forward deploying a carrier battle group. You've got Mike Pompeo yesterday goes and gives a great speech at the Economic Club of New York that talks about that. That's President Trump exerting leadership, and you're seeing, I think, more than John Kennan's famous X memo back in the late 1940s, which was containment of the Soviet Union. This is a full-on, every different vertical in a very sophisticated level, putting the noose around the Chinese Communist Party. And Richard Haas and the national security apparatus just sat there for years and exacerbated their rise. Trump, you're seeing now Trump's entire program come out, including the secret deal that the Iranians have with the Chinese as their partner on the other side of the Eurasian landmass. President Trump, I think, is going to choke down Iran even more with additional sanctions. So you're seeing action, action, action there. I think, and we're getting to the next segment, I think you need that kind of focus today in the pandemic. And I realize, Jack, there's a big spread between the bid and the ask about how big a crisis this is versus maybe how the mainstream media is playing it. But certainly, we need particularly go back to federalism, where you've got the federal government laying out overall policy, giving you directional leadership. The governors are managing the program, and you've got the mayors and the county executives are now the school board heads that are actually going to execute on the deck plates. I think if you take the same framework of strategic thinking and pushing through, imposing your will, as you remember from football, imposing your will on the opposition, you're seeing that in the strategy against the Chinese Communist Party. Now, is it as tough as the ultra hawks want? No. But directionally, is it good and can get better and can get great? Absolutely. And does it come from, I think it's been worked on for years, but now it's coming to light. It's come from nowhere. I think you need the same thing on the pandemic, and particularly as we get in the next section, Jag Maxey, you need guys like Dr. Fauci, I think, to step up. If Dr. Fauci wants to be a playmaker, you got to make plays. And making plays is not making plays in the media. He's become a media darling because he's kind of deteriorated, I think, to a pundit. And we don't need Dr. Fauci as a pundit. What we need Dr. Fauci is on as a task force to be science-based, evidence-based, and data-based. And that's what I think is very important for the whole team to pull together. And I think that if you do that, you'll start to see these polls start to reflect American people's support of the actions.
Yeah, Steve, we've got about 90 seconds left in this segment here, but another part of this, of course, is the news yesterday coming out of the campaign that the campaign manager, Brad Pascal, was effectively demoted, and Bill Stepien stepping up into that campaign manager role.
Look, I said this on John Frederick's earlier. I gave like a 20-minute thing. Look, Bill Stepien's a good man. Brad Pascal's a good man. You got really great people at the campaign. You got really great people in the White House. But this is, I think, a change of kind of focus in that action, action, action. And now I think it needs to be done with urgency, right? The country's in a crisis. Forget the campaign. It just take the action, back it up, do that. The American people are going to see that the campaign should amplify or be a force multiplier on getting that perspective out to the American people. I hate even using the term messaging. Just be a force multiplier to get directionally what you're doing, and things I think will fall in place. I think if you look at these polls and you look at the crosstabs, it's about leadership right now. It's about directionally making sure people are on top of things. You're on top of jobs. You're on top of the pandemic. You're on top of the Chinese Communist Party. People should remember about the stock market. Stock market had the greatest percentage increase in its history last quarter. President Trump dropped 8 points. There's no correlation between a healthy stock market and political success. We need good capital markets. We talk about it all the time. Birch Gold's one of our sponsors. They're a precious metals a dealer and broker with 401ks. But healthy capital markets, healthy investment opportunities are great, but that's not going to lead directly to a re-election.
Yeah, we'll come back with more of this in the next segment. More on Fauci. guest, Dr. Bradley Thayer, as well, will be joining us. We'll be back. More War Room Pandemic. Just a moment.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Just like you, I had problems sleeping. I tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. 15 years ago, I invented MyPillow. It took me 2 years to develop because I wanted to have everything you would ever want in a pillow. I made sure that you could adjust my patented fill so you could have the exact support you need as an individual, regardless of your sleep position. I also wanted a pillow that would last, so I made MyPillow machine washable and dryable. I back MyPillow with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Not only that, I do all my own manufacturing in my home state of Minnesota.
I really like the fact that it was made in the USA. I think that USA products are a better quality product. I've tried a lot of other pillows, and nothing's worked like MyPillow.
I'm interrupting this commercial right now to give you deep discounts, not just on my pillows, but also my mattress toppers, sheets, and so much more. For example, you can get body pillows regularly $89.99, now only $29.99, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
I used to think that sheets were just sheets. I got the Giza Dream sheets. They are the most comfortable sheets I've ever had.
The Go Anywhere pillow is so easy to just roll up and take anywhere I want to go.
Go Anywhere pillow is really comfortable, so that's what I really like. It's nice and supportive, and it's nice and small.
The MyPillow topper, for the first time, has enabled me to have a cool night's sleep. I'm able to go to bed and just get rest.
That's 3 inches of wonderful that's in the MyPillow mattress topper. It's just like a firm cloud.
MyPillow helps me get a good night's sleep so I can do my job in the morning.
Go to MyPillow.com to get deep discounts, not just on my pillows, but so much more. For example, you get body pillows regularly $89.99, now only $29.99, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
My son needs this drug. I hope it doesn't cost too much. I hope my insurance pays for it. Can you tell me how much this will be?
67.
Sorry.
Wait, have you heard about GoodRx? GoodRx finds free coupons to help you save up to 80% on your prescriptions.
Wow. I had no idea.
GoodRx. Stop paying too much for your prescriptions.
I see what's possible instead of what's here. Others see cracked concrete, broken backboards, run-down courts. I see a way to bring pride back to communities. Art can change it all. Bright colors, a bold vision, and it can be somewhere that brings people together for games or hangouts or whatever. A place that makes people proud, like this is my neighborhood. That's why I made Project Backboard and a site with GoDaddy. How will you make your mark? Make the world you want.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back, War Room Pandemic, live from Capitol Hill. Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, episode 283. Over 11 million downloads here on the John Fredericks Radio Network on Newsmax, with America's Voice.news and blown through the CCP's firewall, subtitled in Mandarin by G News and GTV. Over to Stephen K. Bannon.
Yeah, really want to hear from, it's very important today we hear from the War Room Pandemic posse, also in the live chat. Want to hear your feedback. Want to hear your feedback on the campaign. Want to hear your feedback on the pandemic. Want to hear your feedback on China. We need to hear your feedback. Remember, it's this audience that's changing the world. The reason the Chinese intelligence services listen to us straight off, the reason that I'm public enemy #1 in China and vilified by the CCP everywhere is because of the audience. They understand once the deplorables put their shoulder to the wheel, things change. They are absolutely in shock and stunned by what President Trump and Mike Pompeo and others have done and come to light. It's been worked on for a long time. Just don't think this stuff was made up last night. This has been worked on for a long time. They never envisioned that the Alliance of Liberty would unite to take them down. And they should understand that's what this game is. This is not about containment. This is not about, and there's no more win-win. There's no more happy talk about this. You know, somebody said, I think it's one of the tweets yesterday, but I've heard for a long time, the one of the things they're most upset with me about is this focus on the Chinese Communist Party versus the Chinese people or the country of China. Remember, the Chinese people are among the most decent, hardworking people on earth, and they're enslaved by a totalitarian dictatorship, just like the 1930s. You know, Jack Maxey brought before the show, hey, the distance from Czechoslovakia and basically Neville Chamberlain saying peace in our time to the testing of the nuclear weapon was 7 years, under 7 years, actually. So that shows you how quickly things can move. Things are moving quickly today. That's leadership by President Trump. We want to hear from the whole posse, from #WarOnPandemic and from the live chat and from everything. You're on Facebook. We're ubiquitous, and now with over 11 million downloads, and we hit different audiences. We know the Intel community listens to it, the political community, the TV producers, the trading desk of the hedge funds. And why? Because they want to understand what the deplorables are listening to and what they're responding to. And we pride ourselves in giving you tomorrow's news today, the signal, not the noise. We're going to get into some of that signal here in a second, but remember, in turbulent times, what you want is every tool in the toolbox if you're an entrepreneur. Okay, NetSuite by Oracle is that tool. Go to netsuite.com/Bannon, Bannon, today. Get your 7 action steps that every entrepreneur should be taking, and then contact the NetSuite people. Okay, I want to turn to Jack. We're going to do this 2 ways. Let's do Dr. Fauci first. From the beginning, we've been on Dr. Fauci. It's not kind of this right-wing, you know, hey, Dr. Fauci knows Hillary Clinton. He gave money to a Democrat. He's playing footsie with Jonathan Karl in the press room. That's not our beef with Dr. Fauci has not been that from the beginning. We are the first people to call Dr. Fauci out. The reason is we started the show back in January, really mid-January, but then broke it out for its own hour and then went to 2 hours on pandemic. You know, I was telling everybody this thing's going to be the biggest thing in world history. It's coming out of, you know, China and Hubei province, the size of France. They've shut down. They've quarantined a city the size of New York, 40% bigger than New York. Fauci goes on a close buddy of mine's, John Catsimatidis' radio show on WABC on Sunday morning, completely dismisses it. Completely says that we had nothing to worry about. It's nothing, right? And that's at the time I said, hey, I thought this guy was supposed to be an expert. You can see the data right here. You can see the information coming out of China. And we made a lot of contacts. And he's supposedly the guy that has all the contacts with CDC, has all the contacts everywhere. In fact, next week, we're going to be getting into the details of Dr. Fauci's support for the gain-of-function experimentation that was taking on in China. Remember, if you listen to Dr. Yan, and Dr. Yan is a whistleblower, one of many that has now escaped from China. She's in the United States, and her story talks about these gain-of-function experiments that were being done in the P4 lab in Wuhan. Dr. Fauci, I think, is one of the sponsors of all this. Dr. Fauci's been a big supporter of gain-of-function experimentation, and we're going to get into that and really his culpability in all of this. But if you just go back, Jack Maxey, and look at the facts, that's why I don't understand the brouhaha over Peter Navarro. The one thing the media has not addressed whatsoever is what's actually in his report, what other people are saying. And we're trying to do this to try to show support for the American people, but particularly we agree with the mantra of MSNBC and CNN. Let's be data-based, let's be evidence-based, let's be science-based. We absolutely believe that. We take this pandemic very seriously. We're the farthest from the pandemic deniers going on, but you have to look at the facts, and the facts lead you to certain conclusions, even with all the imperfect information we have. His response that was in the New York Post, guys, it might have come from the Atlantic interview, to me is outrageous. And this Fauci thing cannot be allowed to be died down, because obviously the administration is depending upon, and the American people are depending upon a lot of decisions that Dr. Fauci's making. But he comes back yesterday on what Peter Navarro said. Also, I think what this White House list was, and he says, oh, no, contextually what I said at the time was absolutely correct. I've never said anything that's been wrong. Dr. Fauci, this is not the facts. And the mainstream media, I think, has to address this. That's just not the facts. You're essentially a pundit. You have not come out, unless you're doing it behind the scenes at the White House at these meetings. I don't see where you're coming forward and giving evidence, giving facts, giving data to back up your assertions. And you just, quite frankly, have been dead wrong on so many important elements of this. It can't be going away. And we're not there to beat Fauci to break the team up. We actually advocate they should have team meetings every day. I think the president should head those team meetings. And I think we ought to take this and get even more focus on it. But Dr. Fauci, he's a media star for one reason, because he continues to kind of counter, I think, what the administration says sometimes. And I don't know where he's coming from. He's certainly not putting forward the case with evidence or data. If he does, that's a different thing. Jack, let's get into the details here. Even if we got to take up time in the segment, we'll cram in the pandemic analytics part in another segment. Let's go to Dr. Fauci.
Well, Steve, what's so interesting, you remember the article that Navarro wrote in USA Today the other day that's now being criticized. This is why we're covering this topic. It's very interesting. USA Today posts it today now with a caveat saying, several of Navarro's criticisms of Fauci on China travel restrictions, risk from coronavirus, and falling mortality rates were misleading or lacked context. As such, Navarro's op-ed did not meet USA Today's fact-checking standards. Okay, well, let's do some fact-checking, and let's use USA Today to check their own facts, because they wrote an article on February 17 which laid out all of Fauci's misleading statements to that date. They did it in a reassuring fashion because Dr. Fauci was speaking about it. The three things that Navarro claims that Fauci did not do, he said that they originally said that China virus was low risk. Fauci flip-flopped on the use of masks. And Fauci said that the falling mortality rate was not an important number. We know that the last one is an important number because it's the only number that matters. All the rest of the numbers are moving numbers. A month ago, we did 450,000 tests. Yesterday, we did almost 850,000 tests. That'll give you a difference. Now, let's go back to the USA Today article from February 17th, and it's titled, Top Disease Official, Risk of Coronavirus in USA is Minuscule. Skip the masks and wash your hands. USA Today, February 17th, 2020. And let's see if some of the comments are from Mr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci. We want to reassure the public that at this time, there is no evidence that food or food packaging. Further, there's no evidence to support transmission from imported goods. That was fine. That's the one thing he said that probably made sense. Now we go to masks. If you look at the masks that you buy in a drugstore, the leakage around that doesn't really do much to protect you. People start saying, should I start wearing a mask now in the United States? There is absolutely no reason whatsoever to wear a mask. Dr. Fauci, February 17th. And then Fauci says he doesn't want people to worry about the coronavirus because the danger of it is just minuscule, quotations. Then he says what we really should be worried about is the influenza outbreak this year. Quote, we have more kids dying of flu this year at this time than in the last decade or more. At the same time, people are worrying about...
Stop. Hold it. Full stop. I'm going to bring up 3 items in a 3-4 week period that completely blow this guy up. And if he was anybody else but some liberal darling, he'd be completely dismissed. And I honestly think probably sued. Okay, 3 things. Number 1, he went on Newsmax TV and he went on WABC in New York and said, "This America has nothing to worry about." This was in that, I think, 4th week of January, okay? I think it was around the 23rd, 25th. I think it was the day that after Wuhan got shut down. I think it was Sunday the 24th or 25th. And that weekend on Newsmax. Said America has nothing to worry about. This is nothing. Okay. Later that week, he adamantly argued the World Health Organization's point that you can't shut down travel from China. Remember, these are globalists that don't believe in borders. Okay. So the first thing they want to do, they always say, oh, if you shut down borders, people only lie about the disease. They withhold the information, and we need the information. The WHO was being lied to by the Chinese Communist Party, and they're so beholden to the Chinese Communist Party, they weren't even getting the information in mid-January. We know that. They tweeted out false information about human-to-human transmission. Now we know that they've come clean. They said the Chinese didn't even come forward after that. They had to press a case. Dr. Fauci took the party line of Beijing and essentially their captive subsidiary, the WHO, when advising the president. It was Peter Navarro, MSNBC and CNN and USA Today, who's an American hero. What he did is wrote a memo to the President of the United States. You know why he wrote a memo to the President of the United States? He knew that Fauci and the rest of these guys were lying to him and spinning. Fauci's got to own these, okay? Number 1, he was wrong in the 3rd week of January. Then he tells the President of the United States, you don't need to shut down travel to China, okay? He was the leader of that. along with the rest of these guys. Mulvaney's in that. Mulvaney can't wash his hands of this now. Not going to be able to redo history. Yeah, we got to go to break.
Steve, we got to jump.
I'll get
we got
back
to
on my
jump.
soapbox.
We'll think about letting you back on. We'll be back with War Room Pandemic just a second.
Frustrated with heavy rubber hoses that always get tangled and easily kink? Introducing the Bionic Flex Pro hose, the super strong, super tough hose that's ultra light as well. Run over an ordinary hose and it'll easily burst, but the Bionic Flex Pro hose stays intact no matter what runs over it, because its reinforced drag-resistant commercial-grade outer polyester weave makes it tougher and stronger than ever. And its solid brass fittings are crush-proof too. Ordinary hoses kink easily and stop working, but the Bionic Flex Pro hose never kinks. It just keeps flowing strong. And while regular hoses easily get tangled, the Bionic Flex Pro hose is tangle-proof. You can get the 25-foot Bionic Flex Pro hose for just $19.95 with free shipping. But wait, order today and we'll upgrade your order to a 50-foot Bionic Flex Pro hose. Just pay a separate fee, and shipping is still free. Go now.
Call 1-800-313-8062.
You hate coming home to a dark house, and leaving lights on all night drives utility bills out of sight. You need the Bell & Howell Bionic Spotlight, the outdoor motion sensor light that turns on the instant motion is detected and turns off when the motion stops. Bionic Spotlight is solar powered, so there's no expensive wiring or batteries to change. The instant the motion sensor detects movement, Bionic Spotlight triggers 8 high-intensity LED lights that shower the entire area with light and then shuts off 30 seconds after it stops. So you can spend hundreds of dollars on an outdoor lighting system, or you can get the motion-activated Bionic Spotlight for just $19.95 with free shipping. Bionic Spotlight is backed by our 5-year warranty. But wait, if you order right now, you can double the offer and get a second Bionic Spotlight. Just pay a separate fee. And when you call, ask about the contractor's discount on the complete 6-light home value set. Here's how to order.
Call 1-800-486-4451 or go to BionicSpotlight.com. That's 1-800-486-4451 or order online at BionicSpotlight.com.
America's Voice News brings you real news and real opinion in a real world. If you care about this country, then you can help by sharing America's Voice with your friends and family. We're here to bring you the truth with no agendas. America is one of the greatest countries of all time. We need a great leader to keep us on track and safe. If you support this president, then help us by being a beacon of hope and standing up for this great nation. Join us as we fight to bring you the truth in a crazy world. Search America's Voice News on all apps, Roku, Pluto TV, and Dish Network Channel 219. Please help by downloading America's Voice News to your phone, on your smart TV. Search America's Voice on all your internet-connected devices. Then share the truth with your friends and family. America's Voice News, the real news network. Join the America's Voice revolution and consider yourself an American patriot.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room, Thursday, July 16th, the year of our Lord 2020. Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam here, broadcasting live from Capitol Hill. Over to Stephen K. Bannon.
Look, in turbulent times, there's going to be entrepreneurs that lead us through this. Entrepreneurs are going to be at the vanguard of reforming this economy after the inferno that we're hitting right now. If you're an entrepreneur, you need every tool in the toolbox available to you. You need operating leverage. The best way to get leverage is get a software package that pulls it all together. That is NetSuite by Oracle. Oracle's #1 in the cloud. NetSuite's #1 with entrepreneurs. If your business is $1 million in revenue to $100 million, you need NetSuite by Oracle. Go to netsuite.com/Bannon, BANNON today to get your 7 action steps every entrepreneur should be taking. You got to go there, get that, read it. It'll give you great insights to your business. Jack, I want to go back to you for the third element. Look, Dr. Fauci, #1, said, and this is, look, we're trying to help Dr. Fauci step his game up to assist the president and therefore the American people. This thing has been way too much of a pundit. He's now on the cover of some magazine styling the liberal media. He's become a liberal media darling. I don't have a problem with that if it's backed up with results. You know, you are what your record says you are. said Bill Parcells, the great New York Giants football coach, you are what your record says you are. His record, he's got 3 strikes at the beginning that, quite frankly, make him dangerous, okay, dangerous. That is, he told all the media, we got nothing to worry about in January, which was dead wrong. If a bunch of clowns like us can start a show to say, hey, there's a huge thing going on in central China that could be a world historical event, and people who are very serious, like the Chinese Communist Party, of keeping control of things, if they're shutting down areas the size of France, if they're quarantining, and I mean quarantine, a hard quarantine, a city 40% bigger than New York, if they're shutting down, remember we had the professor in Vietnam that said nothing moved in China. I mean, nothing moved in China for 3 or 4 weeks. You know it's a big deal. And Fauci's ain't nothing to worry about, then argues that you shouldn't shut down borders. Think of the hundreds of thousands of people that we saved in the United States and that we helped in mainland China by not allowing travel here to the United States. And then the third one, Jack, that's absolutely mind-boggling, on February, 19th, he said the thing is minuscule. He says it's minuscule on February 19th. You go back and listen to our February 19th, our shows in early February, where we got Dr. Hatfield and Rosemary Gibson and Rossi from Italy. You hear the broadcast we were doing, people. You see if it was minuscule at the time and see what's happened today. Now, this is the guy the media is holding up as the end-all and be-all, and they will not address the substance of Peter Navarro's letter. In fact, USA Today makes this claim today. That's absolutely false. It's all backed up. It was in their own paper. So, Jack, I don't know what you hand this. We got Dr. Thayer. We're going to get to him in a minute on China, but I want to wrap up. Give me your assessment of this Fauci situation, because you've been on this, Jack Maxey, from January, when you're the first guy to highlight to me, besides John Katsimatidis, who was in my face saying, hey, Bannon, your hair's on fire. He said this big thing in human history. This guy, Dr. Fauci, who's the biggest guy ever, I knew him in the Clinton administration, says there's nothing going on and a total overreaction. Jack, what's your assessment?
Well, my assessment is that he's kind of a pundit more than a scientist, Steve. We've talked about this. We want data. We want actual specific information. And again, he seems to sort of talk off the cuff. And what I really don't like is seeing Peter Navarro get slammed for making statements that we can prove in USA Today's own paper from February that Fauci did every single thing that Peter Navarro had claimed that he had done incorrectly. He did all of those things. And what I also want to point out, which I think is kind of fair, is that Fauci basically poo-poos the whole thing. He says that we should be much more worried about the influenza outbreak this year. And really, if you're coughing, cover your mouth, and otherwise just wash your hands, the regular things that we do every year. This is what he told us in February 17th, and now 5 months later, the whole world has been shut down. This is not a guy who I think has been calling everything exactly contextually correctly as he claimed yesterday.
This is, and that's what got me on this when he had to come back on this. These are not small misses. These are not like 5%. People look 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%. You can have misses all the time. These are absolute whiffs, and they're whiffs on essential things. This is not talking about, some marginal aspect of this. This is talking about the thing itself. And in that case, and when his judgment was asked for by the President of the United States, it was just dead wrong. So, Dr. Fauci to me is a guy he's got to step up. When he comes forward with a recommendation, he's got to put forward to me, the evidence, the data, and what he's talking about, because his track record's abysmal, by far the worst of anybody in this. And I don't see how the mainstream media can sit there and go on this mantra of the evidence, data, whatever. And Fauci, it's all opinion. And it's one thing one day, Jason Miller, when he was on here before he joined the campaign, he used to talk about him as move the goalpost. So, Jack, I know we got a lot more to get to on the pandemic part of this, on evidence and data that we'll get to a little later in the show. But I do want to bring in Dr. Bradley Thayer. Dr. Thayer is been, one of the great strategic thinkers. He's got a great piece up in the Hill newspaper today. Jimmy Finkelstein and the guys over the Hill is one of the best sources of information in Washington. If you don't go there, you ought to be on that all day long, because they update it constantly. Big analysis piece. I don't want to call it an opinion piece, an analysis piece, Dr. Thayer, by you in the Hill, where you're saying it's not too late strategically to really correct something that's been one of the biggest misses of any major country in world history, but particularly the United States. And I wanted to have you on today because we played Richard Haas from the Council on Foreign Relations yesterday, and Haas was just, all over the map. And he's, to me, emblematic of the elites in this country, that have let the country down because they've been they've either been compromised, or they're just useful idiots, or they're just overall morons. They didn't see the rise of China and the CCP, and they exacerbated by supporting them. So, Dr. Thayer, walk us through your piece today.
Excellent, Steve. Thanks for having me on. The piece argues that the United States has to return to the principles of strategy in order to successfully confront the Communist Party of China. The arguments are, first, that the United States needs to focus on power, and we need to focus on that, which is a foundation of, or the coin of the realm in international politics. Power means, of course, military power or economic power, but also alliances, diplomatic efforts, and soft power. Second, we need to focus on relative power, right? It's not just what we have and what our capabilities are, but what China's are and how they have grown enormously. The third element there is that determines threat. China's rise and the threat that posed to the United States and the international order the United States and its allies created is directly under threat. We knew that this was happening year by year for a generation. We didn't do anything about it, and that's appalling and shameful that our foreign policy elite and others ignored the rise of China.
No. Dr. Thayer, hang on. It's worse than that. We got to get this on the table. You lay this out in your piece. This concept of the Thucydides trap, that we're the declining power and they're the rising power, is the exact same intellectual construct they used in the 70s, that Kissinger and Allison Graham and these guys, used in the 70s to say the rising command economy of the Soviet Union, their military, is their ascendant. We're declining. We need détente. We need rapprochement. We need all these weapons deals, et cetera, until Reagan came in and said, hey, how about this? They're the evil empire. We win, they lose. Let me simplify it. That's what's happened. It's this, and this is both political parties. It's the economic class. It's the financial class on Wall Street, the investor class. It's the multinational corporations that Joe Biden represents. They bought into an idea and a concept that the West, and particularly the United States, was in decline. This Thucydides trap goes back to the Peloponnesian War. It talks about Athens and Sparta, the rising power and the declining power. And that's what they bought into, and they exacerbated this. The elites in our country exacerbated it because they bought into a false narrative. You've seen in the last 72 hours, trust me, the United States of America, even with all our problems, and today with all our social unrest and a pandemic caused by the Chinese Communist Party, we are 10x more powerful than the Chinese Communist Party. They are a paper tiger, and they're getting called out everywhere. You take any vertical, information warfare, economic warfare, kinetic warfare, they're a paper tiger. Once the United States stands up to technology, once we stand up on capital, once we stand up on military power, they're nothing. And they understand this, okay? We're driving it home, whether that is shutting down TikTok, shutting down Huawei, blowing out the firewall, get rid of all these crap companies they've got that's stolen technology from the United States, and let them see Western technology, particularly the Chinese people, or whether it's shutting them out of the capital markets. Remember, Hong Kong's the anvil and the US dollar is the hammer, okay? If you want to break the Chinese Communist Party, we could break them in 30 days. Cut them off from the US dollar, sanction 5 or 6 big banks, sanction Wang Qishan and their families, go to the hundreds of billions of dollars they've taken, money laundered into the West, seize their assets in the West End of London, seize their assets in Belgravia, seize their assets in Midtown Manhattan, strip the mask off the whole phony thing, then send the carrier battle groups into the Taiwan Straits, the South China Sea, forward deploy the bombers, and then have the British home port in Singapore. And let's see the Chinese Navy come out and try to lock down the South China Sea like they did in the entire Obama-Biden administration. Call them out everywhere. The elites, and your article does it, but in your own gentlemanly way, because you're a genius, but you're not a brawler. do you think that the elites in this country are principally responsible for the rise of the Chinese Communist Party on a relative basis to the free people in the United States of America?
They are. The success of the Chinese Communist Party is due to their own efforts to deceive and to lie about their intent and their direction. But it's also a failure of our elite, as you identified, that how we could ignore this, it was happening right in front of our nose year after year, is simply historically unprecedented. Right? You've never seen in a period of history of international politics the United States or any other country ignoring the rise of a challenger. So that's reversing now, obviously. As you've identified, there's real balancing going on against China on all azimuths, right, in terms of the information warfare, the economic, and the kinetic. More needs to be done, certainly, in terms of creating and tightening alliance relationships and to call attention to the threat that China poses. We also need to mobilize domestically. So what Ray's, FBI Director Christopher Ray's speech last week, on July 7th.
Dr. Thayer, let's hold over to the next segment.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Thayer, if you wouldn't mind hanging on, we want to conclude on this. It's an excellent point, and we want to get the whole thing. But we've got to go to a quick break now. But if you don't mind hanging over, that's fantastic. War Room Pandemic will return in just a moment, and we want your comments, ladies and gentlemen, specifically as well from the first segment of the show. I want to see in the comment section on hashtag War Room Pandemic what you think about the polls. Also, have you been polled? Do you pick up the phone? How do you answer? We want to hear from you guys. Jack Maxey, Greg Manns, Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon, Dr. Bradley Thayer return in just a moment.
Brett Favre, legendary quarterback. Jerry Rice, legendary wide receiver.
You ready for your weekly meeting?
Yeah, we're ready.
Let's do this. Let's stack the deck.
When legends play, they wear CopperFit Advanced Back Pro. CopperFit's best-selling compression back support just got better with new double-band adjustable supports for customizable compression when you need it most.
Since I put this on, I feel so much better. The core is the most important thing. To know that I'm stabilized here. Whatever I'm doing, I can give it 100%.
4 built-in stabilizing supports designed to improve posture and help reduce lower back stress and strain.
You have back pain, and it's affecting your everyday life. You do something.
If you can find something to help you get back out and be active like CopperFit, go for it.
Absolutely.
Do not give up. A high-performance compression fabric infused with the powerful properties of copper, 360-degree flexible mobility, and lightweight, durable construction.
Nothing more painful than having back pains. If you're aching, if you feel like you can't work out anymore, you can. And that's with CopperFit.
Yeah. It's for all of us who still want to be active, still want to compete.
Way to go. That's what I'm talking about. Man, this really does feel good. It feels to me like the fountain of youth.
CopperFit's best-selling back support just got bigger, badder, and better. Or call 1-800-944-5851. Or on the web at advancedbackpro.com. Get yours now for only $19.99.
This does feel good.
That's what I've been saying.
You think it was fair?
It was fun.
Play for the love of the game.
CopperFit, live limitless.
Windshields are impossible to clean, and a dirty windshield can be downright dangerous. Introducing the Hurricane Windshield Wizard, the one tool that reaches and cleans for you. It uses the power of microfiber with a pivoting head to make cleaning windshields quick and easy. The specially designed ergonomic handle fills with tap water and dispenses at the touch of a button, so you can clean in seconds without straining. And it folds away for space-saving storage. Order now and get the Hurricane Windshield Wizard with free extra bonnet for just $19.99. But order now and you can double the offer. Plus, you can also get the Battle Visor, the visor that blocks the harsh glaring sun and keeps you safe on the road. Just pay a separate fee and we'll ship everything to you for free. That means you can get all this and free shipping. Order now.
Call 1-800-474-7530 or visit GetWindshieldWizard.com. So call 1-800-474-7530 now.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. Greg Mans, Jack Maxey, and Raheem Kassam, broadcasting from Capitol Hill, getting some respite from the hot heat in the last few days here on the Capitol Hill. Over to Stephen K. Bannon.
Yeah, Dr. Thayer, you've got the audience that strikes fear into the guys in Beijing, and they understand this audience is who made Donald Trump president of the United States in 2016. They understand that this audience stood up to the managed decline by our elites, and they wouldn't tolerate it anymore. They also understand that this audience is now bonding with Lao Beijing, old 100 names in China, that they are our comrades, and we are there to assist them. Only the Chinese people can get their freedom. Only the Chinese people can take down the CCP. But they now understand that the deplorables stand with them. So you're sitting there, tell us on domestically, you've got the audience that makes things happen. Tell this audience, you say domestically, what do they need to do and how do they need to do it and when do they need to do it?
What we need to do is recognize the true nature of the Communist Party of China, which you've emphasized, of course, throughout this program. That has to be drawn in contrast to American principles. Our value, the values that we hold dear, including liberty and freedom. And we Americans need to recognize that may be lost as a result of the growth of China and the danger that it poses. Americans also need to recognize that we can't do what we've done before. Right? We failed for a generation, so we need to first recognize the threat. And truly internalize that, right? Recognize that indeed that this government is a threat to everything that we hold dear. And then what we also need to do is then act upon that, right? By the scope of what that's going to take, of course, is going to be will be innumerable, right? So many steps in terms of the technology. You mentioned not using TikTok, of course, and many of the other apps, but much more significantly, we need to also recognize that what's critical is separating ourselves from China, reducing the aperture of the exposure that Americans have and the ability of the Chinese Communist Party to influence Americans. So that means in media, that means in Hollywood, that means recognizing China's growing influence in media, in social media, and in Hollywood, in the financial world, which you've emphasized consistently, Steve, recognizing that our investments and allowing China access to our capital markets is really the acme of stupidity. It's unbelievable that we allowed that to happen, and it's unbelievable that we're allowing it to continue. So Americans have to take heart as well, finally. Americans need to recognize that we won in our conflict. When we mobilize, our determination is unrivaled and our power is unrivaled. So the United States will be able to confront the Chinese Communist Party and will be able to roll back its pernicious influence if we take the threat to heart, as we did in our previous confrontations.
Dr. Thayer,
with peer or near peer competitors.
Real quickly, let me ask you, because we're running out of time. The president took certain actions in Hong Kong and left others maybe do another day. If you were in the Oval Office today, what 3 actions would you tell the President of the United States you believe he must take on Hong Kong to help take down the Chinese Communist Party?
The 3 actions that I would advise are, first, we need to ensure that we need to have a successful political opposition, which has to be supported by American diplomacy and by the diplomacy of our allies. Secondly, we need to sanction China. So the fact that they have violated the treaty with Britain and that they have violated their own agreements with previous Hong Kong governments, they have to be held to account. So we need to sanction them in the financial realm and in the political realm. The third action that I would advise is that we need to incorporate this into our public diplomacy, right? The fact that China is crushing Hong Kong reveals the true nature of the Chinese Communist Party. And the rest of the world needs to see that, right? That they violate their agreements, they suppress freedom and liberty, and as a result, they're a retrograde force in international politics.
Dr. Thayer, how can people get access to the article today on the Hill? We're going to have it up later. I'm sure it's going to be a national pulse. How do people get your Twitter handle? How do they get access to you?
We tweet at ThayerHan1, the number 1. So THAYERHAN and the number 1. And so that's the best way to reach our writing.
Okay, Dr. Thayer, thank you for joining us. Glad you're back on the show. Just fantastic article. Raheem, I want to go to you and Jack real quickly. You know, Jack Maxey brought up, we started the first hour of the show talking about the 75th anniversary of the testing of the nuclear weapon, the Trinity program in New Mexico, 75 years ago today. You know, and Jack Maxey said, hey, look, you talked yesterday about the Czechoslovakia and Munich in 1938, September of 1938. There's only 7 years difference. 7 years from the basically peace in our time of Neville Chamberlain, the surrender to the Nazis, to the nuclear weapon going off to end the greatest war in mankind's history in the Pacific. That's because the United States was the arsenal of democracy. Raheem and Jack, and this will pick the theme up the next hour, given modern technology, have we allowed the technology of the United States becoming arsenal of dictatorship for the Chinese Communist Party? Let's talk about this Twitter hack yesterday. Let's talk about what's happening with TikTok and other things. We'll continue this into the next segment.
Well, you know, Steve, when we're talking about AI and the atomic energy, or the atomic bomb movement, they're very similar, right? The Chinese are behind us. We hear from Eric Schmidt, maybe 5 years in terms of artificial intelligence, maybe 10 years in terms of computers, creating computers, but they're very near. And so artificial intelligence is sort of like the nuclear program of today. And we have to stay ahead of it, and we need to be on top. I mean, I think that there's a very clear equivalent there.
Steve, my answer to your question is a very basic one. The answer is yes. We have this major problem right now, and you saw it take place with the Twitter hack yesterday. We'll get into that and more in the next show here today. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Episode 284 is upon us. We'll be right back after this short break.
The hottest new razor is taking the men's grooming world by storm. And if you don't have it, you need it. Micro Touch Solo, the hyper-advanced full-body razor that trims, shapes, edges, and even shaves with micro precision. And it's totally safe to the touch. Go solo for full body control with one tool. No nicks, bumps, or ingrown hairs. Edge beards and goatees with one touch.